Good morning. This is Coach Candy, and it is time for Coffee Chats. I am so glad you are here. It is Monday after a holiday weekend. Hope you all had a wonderful time with your family, friends, and wherever you were. I hope you had fantastic weather. It was just absolutely gorgeous in Austin here this weekend. The other thing, good morning, Deborah. The other thing I wanted to say is I hope all of you have had a chance to watch Brene Brown's new special on Netflix called Call to Courage. It was absolutely, positively amazing, far better than I even imagined. We laughed, we cried. A bunch of us watched it on Tuesday or Friday night. So hope you get an opportunity to watch it. It was powerful, to say the least. It's an hour and 16 minutes long. Definitely worth watching. Good morning, ladies. Good morning, Terry. Good morning, Elaine. It is Monday morning. Hope everybody had a great Easter. We are about to kick things off with Monday Mindset. But for some of you that might be joining, as always, let me just give you the rundown. I am here every morning, 7:30 live Central Time. And we do a variety of different things. Monday is all about mindset, setting us up for the best intention, the best way that we can show up and play at our highest level. It really sets the framework for an awesome and powerful week. And then Tuesday's all our training space. We're going to get into some strategies, tips, and tools to help you really level up your game. And then Wednesday is the Wonder Space. Wednesday is our place to dance in the possibilities and play Imagine If and tap into our beautiful, juicy imagination. Thursday is our thankful space. We are doing a lot of work on gratitude for Thursdays. And then Friday's our feature space. And while Friday was our feature space, I really do want to emphasize, and I'll come back to it many times, but want to emphasize, and so I'm going to add a little plug right here for the new Brene Brown special. I really, really, really encourage you to watch Call to Courage. It was without a doubt extremely powerful. And like I said, it's an hour and 16 minutes long. It feels so like there's so much more packed into that. And I've already watched it twice because I watched it Friday night with a group of girls, both live and virtual. And then I had to watch it again Saturday morning when my sister was running around town a little bit. So anyway, highly encourage. The messages are so impactful, and there's a lot of what she teaches through Daring Greatly and Rising Strong that are part of that special. So please, please, please check it out. It is powerful. Today, though, I want to talk about shifting a mindset around boundaries and why we need to talk about boundaries as it relates to how we show up, how we serve, and what's that look like to really lead from love with love. And oftentimes people think boundaries create conflict and stress, and what happens is actually the conflict and stress arise because we don't have boundaries. And speaking of Brene, one of the comments that I really like that she talks about in Dare to Lead is that clarity is kind, being unclear is unkind. And how I take that is clarity is also being very clear about our boundaries and expectations. What happens oftentimes is we either think someone should read our mind, yoga done, HPX planning done, watering myself like crazy. It's a beautiful in Wisconsin. Awesome. I'm so excited to hear that. Yeah, I heard the weather's really nice up north, which is awesome. I want to talk about some boundaries a little bit. Oftentimes we start our week and we don't have a very clear sense of what we need, what we should be asking for, and what are our non-negotiables. And it's one of those things when you're resetting your week, when you're talking about, good morning, Mario, when you're talking about how to show up in your most powerful way, when you're talking about how you can truly lead from a servant heart, how you can lead with more impact and influence, it becomes very critical that you start to look at what are you okay with? What are you comfortable with? What are you not okay with? And what are your non-negotiables? And I think oftentimes we forget that piece in particular. And so we expect people to read our mind. We expect people to show up with us or for us the way we need, yet we're not giving them opportunity. And what happens is it's extremely unkind because we are not being clear about what we need. We are not being clear about how we need to show up, what's okay for us, what's not okay for us. And then when somebody violates that space, we put all of that energy on them and forget to take responsibility for the fact that we never asked. And so as we think about our mindset, and this goes for boundaries even for yourself, and I know that sounds a little cuckoo maybe. But I think oftentimes we don't even know our own boundaries around what's safe for us, what's okay for us, what's not. And we dance in spaces sometimes that are overly risky for where we're at. They are purposely putting us in harmful situations. They are not acknowledging our own worth in that space. And so, good morning, Brenda. Oh, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Martha. Love seeing some new faces here this morning. So I want you to think about that for a minute. As we think about resetting our mindset each week, as we think about how we want to show up and who we are, and what does that mean in terms of how we can lead more powerfully, more effectively, more influentially, we need to think about what are those boundaries that we need. And sometimes it's I need a boundary that says, and I'll give you an example of a personal boundary. When I first transitioned to do what I'm doing now, and I left corporate and I moved to Austin, I was very much about, I'm an extrovert, I'm out there, and I just wanted to be plugged into every networking group possible, and I wanted to go out to every meetup and everything. I was probably doing 7 or 8 different networking groups or meetups a week, and it was exhausting me. And one of the things that I had to learn for myself is, one, as much as I can be very extroverted, I'm also extremely introverted. And I need really clear boundaries when I'm going to be full on out, when my energy is outward, when I'm deriving my energy outward, then I need to carve dedicated space to allow myself to go inside. And that was really clear that when I was doing 7 or 8 meetups or networking things a week, I was depleting myself and I was exhausting myself because I wasn't giving myself the boundaries to say, you know what, how about we don't do more than 2 or 3 a week, which I've actually shifted that to no more than 1 or 2 a week because I found that my balance actually needs to be even bigger. Same thing when I do an event. So I'll do a training event, or I'll do my 3-day event, which is coming up next week, right? And so my 3-day event, I will put everything, all my energy will be out for 3 days. I am there to serve everyone. I derive my energy off the audience and the participants and the people there. And then I'm very clear that not just for the weekend, the following Monday and Tuesday, my schedule is pretty light, and I probably won't be doing a lot of engaging with the outer world. That is my time to go deep. That is my time for internal reflection, and that's a very clear boundary. I'm very adamant about. In fact, even my sister asked me if I was doing something that weekend. I said, anything that I do has got to be extremely low key, and I'm not in a social space. Because for me, I know that once I give all of that, I need a boundary that says I need to check out. I need to unplug. I need to disconnect from the world because I've put it out there in such capacity. So that is a boundary, good morning, Jeff, that I've actually created for myself. And I'm very clear to communicate that boundary and that expectation with other people. People that want to get on my calendar, people I'm like, those 2 days are not available because that's my recovery space. That's my recharge space. And so I want you to think about where in your life you need to create better boundaries, because some of why you're feeling exhausted sometimes, some of why you feel stressed, depleted, anxious, overwhelmed, oftentimes is because you haven't gotten clear about your personal boundaries. This is really important when you've got people that are putting things on your calendar. And I know I deal with a lot of my corporate clients who we talk about the infamous TCONs, right? Which for those of you that don't know what a TCON is, it's a teleconference, which means that you are getting on a call of 20 people to get on another call of 20 people. And there are some organizations, several I have worked for in the past, that the amount of TCONs they have a week is absolutely the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. They start their Monday morning on a 7:30 TCON. They have then an 8:30 and a 9 and then a 10 and 11, and they are on 5 TCONs before they've even been able to focus and get clear on how they're going to show up for their week. And so you've got to be able to create boundaries that say, I only need to be on those TCONs where I need to be a contributor. Anything else I can get a summary on and don't necessarily need to be showing up for that space. And when we start to own that space, when we start to set expectations that say, look, if my big priorities are this, me sitting on a wasted TCON where it's just information isn't the best and highest use of my time. If I need to be a contributor, if I need to be someone who's influencing something on those calls, that's totally different. If it's I just need to be there because they want to make sure everybody hears the message, then I probably need to create a boundary and find a different way to access that information, because I'm not then playing at my highest and best value. And most of the time people are kind of in that switch tasking mode, right? Where they've got 14 different devices going on. They're not really listening anyway. And so they're wasting energy and time in multiple spaces instead of creating a boundary that says, this isn't okay for me. This isn't okay that I start my Monday mornings on 5 TCons and I have no time to regroup and think about how to lead myself or my team. And so there needs to be more leadership in when, oh my God, so many, I love that. We did one on Monday, 2 on Wednesday, and 1 on Thursday. Oh, you have a light load. We used to do, seriously, there was 5 on Monday. There were several, it was just ridiculous. Some of the companies I used to work for, literally, I had 3 devices going at all times. I had instant messenger going on my computer. I had my cell phone going, and I usually had a headpiece on because I was on my phone on some TCon and I'm trying to get work done. So I got email and instant messenger and my cell phone texting, and I've got a wireless headset, and it had to be wireless because I had to be able to move. I mean, my God, the only thing I got an opportunity to do once in a while, and even that was kind of working it in, was trying to find time to go to the bathroom. Which is ridiculous that you have things scheduled so much that there's days that you look at your calendar, you're like, when am I gonna pee? I mean, seriously, that is a sign of you're not creating enough boundaries. And I get a lot of pushback. I especially get a lot of pushback from mid to upper level leaders in corporate because they will say, I can't possibly create boundaries. No one's gonna respect that. They're gonna get on me. I'm like, yeah, people are not gonna be happy at first. But what's interesting is when you create boundaries, you teach people how to engage with you. You teach people how to work with you, and every one of my people in corporate that is creating boundaries, it's one of the reasons we worked so hard on building your ideal calendar, which, by the way, this week I will be releasing an entire toolkit system, whatever, for those of you that really want to build your ideal calendar. I have the entire toolkit that will be launched, so you will have access to all of that. I will post it in this group as well. But it is one of the reasons why you need that calendar. You need that organization. You need to have your power hour in the morning and how you close your day. You need to have some things that are non-negotiable so that you can show up and play out in your most effective way. The meetings to discuss the meeting. Oh my God, yes. It's amazing to me how you have 20 people in a room to talk about a meeting and then one person's missing. So then you need another meeting of 20 people to have the same meeting. And it's the meeting of the meeting, because most of the time, and here's where boundaries are really important, and I love the work that Brene does in Dare to Lead, we have the conversations in the hallway. And there needs to be more and more boundaries created that if the discussion isn't happening in the meeting, then the discussion isn't allowed to happen. It's not allowed to be a hallway conversation. It's not allowed to stir up gossip. And the reason that things break down communication, interactions, opportunities is because we're not creating effective boundaries. And so let me see what the rest of you are saying. They need to just send an email or something and maybe think about if it's even worth to discuss at all. Absolutely. Mario, agree. And when there are more than a few people on a call, there's no option. Exactly. I'm going to tell you one of the things, and whether or not you liked him as a person, I mean, Steve Jobs was notorious for being known as a jerk. From an interactive, how he dealt with people. However, one of the things that I absolutely appreciate was that he would sit in the meeting and there'd be 20 people and he'd look at them and say, do you need to be here? What are you going to contribute? And they're like, I don't know and no. And he's like, then you need to leave. And if there were more than 3 or 4 people in a meeting, he sent them away because there's no need. You cannot have an effective meeting with 20 people. Now, if you're going to do a facilitated brainstorming, mind-storming session, totally different. But if you're looking to have a meeting with a clear agenda that is, here's an issue, here's a solution, if you've got more than 4 or 5 people in that room, you have way too many people in that meeting, and it is ineffective already because, to Terry's point, there is no option for dialogue. There's usually one person speaking at you, not with you, but at you, and there's an agenda that's coming down that you're just supposed to sit there and do the group thing, which is the most dangerous thing for an organization, and nod your head and go, yep, we're all great. Every meeting should be a 2 pizza meeting. That's hilarious. Well, I actually used to, speaking of boundaries, and I love that you say that, Mario, one of my boundaries was even when we would go socialize after work, because I was notorious for wanting to set up happy hours. I wanted to get to know the people I worked with. Or when I was traveling, when I was in sales, say I was going to a meeting with GE or somewhere else, that I used to have a boundary for people that wanted to, socialize and hang out with me, that I'm like, we have a 30-minute or 2-drink maximum on. When you hit either one of those, whichever's first, depending on how people drank, we're done talking shop. 30 minutes, you can sit here, you can vet, you can vent, you can have your discussion, you can talk about those meetings, you can do whatever you want. 30 minutes or 2 drinks, that's it, whichever came first, and we're done. And that's it, because I refuse to spend my entire evening talking about what we just spent 10 hours on the day before, especially when we're coming out of big meetings that were like deep dive, whatever. There was a boundary and an expectation that said, for me, because I would actually walk away if they kept talking. I'm like, I made this pretty clear, and I'd go sit at a table by myself and invite whoever wanted to come over that didn't want to talk shop anymore. Because if you don't have boundaries for when you can turn it off, you will find yourself perpetually sucked in on every level, which is exhausting you. You cannot be plugged into anything 24/7, especially work and the job and all the things that you're doing in that space. And so enough people to feed with 2 pizzas and not only long enough to finish the pizza. See, amen. Those kind of boundaries, those kinds of expectations are extremely, I know they sound kind of punchy, but they're extremely powerful when it comes to how you're showing up, how you're leading, and how you're teaching people to engage and interact with you. Good morning, Paul. Best TCons forever. Best TCons ever, for real. Amen. Good morning, Mark. Good morning. Oh, I love seeing you on here. 2 best TCons of all time. Tuesday AM drive-in, key priorities for the week. Friday post-lunch celebration and gratitude sharing. Worked for 100 plus leaders because we could hear all and pop in. See, that's really powerful. And I do love, and here's the thing. We always have the meetings, or we have the space that's either to, you know, we got an issue, we need to create a solution, or we've got all kinds of things not going right. Most of the TCons I ever sat on were always the really negative heavy, something's got to change, something's not working, here's the state of the business. And I love the fact that Terry's highlighting that one of the most opportune times is that space of celebration and gratitude. That is something that we're not creating enough of. And so think about that boundary around what you need, what's okay for you, what you need. And it is that space. And so that might even be a personal boundary or a personal space that you're starting to create a framework that says, I need more space to celebrate me, celebrate my gifts, celebrate and reward myself simply for who I am. Celebrate and step in a place where I can have gratitude and celebrate others. And so if you think about what's going to be most impactful and most influential as a leader, think about those missed opportunities to say thank you. We've done a lot of discussion on these calls around gratitude. Slam me right back into my IT scrum time. Oh my God. That just gave me, honestly, Terry, that just gave my whole body chills. I don't even want to hear that word scrum time right now. That just, whoo, that's never been one of those meetings that ever was like, yay. It was usually like, right? So, I mean, even the language in terms of how we set these things up could give you such an energetic reaction. And I have to say my whole body just felt that one. Sucked in is correct. Absolutely, Paul. IT scrum. Love that word. Means nothing to the outside of IT. Yes, and for those that have a knowledge of what that is, it really does leave a nasty taste in your mouth, and it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. It makes my whole body cringe. I so don't miss that space. Can I just acknowledge that? I've said that a million times. In fact, I was watching something the other day, or I was talking to my corporate people, and I'm just like, I just don't miss that space. I just don't miss that space of some of these things that were so irrelevant. And the idea of them was great, but the way that they were executed was absolutely useless and pointless 99% of the time. I tried to use it one day, and someone thought I was talking about something gross. That's hilarious. So where right now, let's have a conversation. I love all these things, these examples. Where do you need to create some boundaries for yourself, either for yourself personally or with others? And usually when you have to create those boundaries for yourself, it also includes being able to create those boundaries and expectations with others, because that's one of the things people say. They're like, I can't, if I change this, then so-and-so is going to think that. Perhaps, and they'll figure it out. You can reinvent yourself. You can change how you show up. You can be more purposeful, more deliberate at any moment, and you can teach people. And for those of you that are like, oh, but people are so used to me doing this. Yes, and guess what? They will create a new habit and get used to you doing something else. Just know that every time you give me a reason, you're giving me an excuse as to why you're not leveling up your own game. And so I really work with my corporate people in this space. So like, I know, but people are just going to get mad that I say no to a meeting. I'm like, then maybe they'll rethink how they invite you and what they're inviting you to. And at the end of the day, is it more important that they like you and that they're not mad at you for not joining their ridiculous meeting, or that you're getting what you need to get done so that you can move the needle forward and actually create high performance in your space, because that's what you're getting paid for? And so just be mindful of your language around that, because we don't even realize we're inadvertently creating a lot of excuses and rationalization and justification as to why we can't create boundaries. And so I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what kinds of boundaries do you personally feel are an opportunity for you to level up and lead from a higher level of influence that would be game changers for you if you were to start to implement them this week. I have a hard time, Mario, I have a hard time creating boundaries. I operate on two extremes. Either I'm fully available to you at any given time, or you're blocked from my social media or life. Okay, I'm actually going to dig into that one a little bit, Mario, because as someone who is also a notorious all or nothing kind of person, I'm either in or I'm out. It's either 1,000% commitment or I'm completely disinterested. I will tell you that that also is creating massive exhaustion and anxiety at times for you, because it's not allowing you to see a spectrum. It's also, and for me, and I'm speaking from my experience, so take this with whatever you take this with, a grain of salt, whatever, and I'm just going to share my experience through that. I've recognized for me that when I play too far in the extremes, I lose a magnitude of compassion that is really important for me, because I start to become blind to seeing all of the stuff in the gray. And when you're so in the black and white, you're so like, it's either all yes, or I'm like, absolutely not. When I have to get in that space of either or, it is a clear indication of how badly I need boundaries, because I'm willing to just cut somebody out of my life completely because they violated something they didn't even know was a line for me. They violated something, and there are also ways that you can create boundaries that other people don't need to know about. There are people in my life, say for example, family members or even friends I went to high school, or people that post stuff on social media, where I love them. I want to know time to time what's going on, but I don't necessarily want to follow their feed, because it just doesn't feed me, or it does the opposite, right? And so instead of completely extricating them from my social media, what I might do is just stop unfollowing them, or not putting them. And I've gone through and actually filtered who I want to see first in my feed. I have people that really inspire me and want to be in that space. And so I've created a boundary. I've also created a boundary for how much time I spend in social media. Because if I start feeling that space of, this is just driving me crazy, this is not, then it's not so much about the people showing up. It's about, am I spending my time in a way that says I'm playing at my highest and best value? Or am I just getting sucked in because I'm not being mindful? And so I do want you to realize that when we get into that black and white, that we lose oftentimes an element of compassion, because we make assumptions too often and we put people in one bucket or another, and there's no in between. And what happens is we miss so much awesomeness in the in between. And I know that because that was my default, and still at times my default, that is a constant work in progress, is that if I don't allow myself permission, and I'm going to say it again, allow myself permission to play in the gray and get curious, then what happens is I miss opportunities to build deeper relationships with people who maybe were having a bad day, or maybe I didn't understand where they were coming from. Because what happens is that trigger that shows up for me, I'm just like, okay, I'm done. And that is a really selfish space, because it's not me saying, okay, do I really believe that person's coming from the best place? And was I clear about what I need, what I don't need, and how they're violating that space? Wow, no. And I remember I read something from Awakened Millionaire by Joe Vitale that said, when we feel triggered, or when we're reacting to something, it's when we've gone unconscious. So I think about that when I think about, okay, do I really just want to put everybody in a yes or no bucket? That eliminates a lot of awesome potential and possibilities and relationships, and it's too harsh and too decisive. And so I just offer that a little bit, because I know that as I've gone through that journey, the more I keep things in an yes or no, right or wrong, black or white, the more I'm missing the opportunities to reflect on potentially what's triggering me, for me to grow, for me to extend bigger compassion, and for me to get curious about why this is such a trigger for me, or where this is coming from. And so I just offer that, because for some of you, I know you're extreme type A personalities like me. And I also know that it's easy sometimes. And so that's the other thing I want you to think about for a minute. It's easy sometimes to just say, I'm over it, I'm done, instead of investing time in to say, Help me understand what's happening, what's my role in this, and what this person is trying to communicate or where this person is coming from. And again, it's not to say that you'll change that and you won't still have, a clear, because there are just some people that absolutely, I'm like, I'm not even going there. The energy, I can feel it, is not my energy. Great, then you just remove it, it's fine. But it's those people that you're making an assumption too quickly based on this much information instead of understanding or having compassion that something's probably going on below the surface, that something is happening that could be your opportunity to lean in, step in, that could create a doorway or pathway for something more amazing. And so I just offer that a little bit, because watch those extreme spaces. My days are super hectic sometimes just because I don't set up boundaries. Absolutely. I will tell you, your days that are the most exhausting, your days that feel the most overwhelming, is because you were not clear about your boundaries. You are letting other people lead you instead of you choosing to lead yourself. And it's the same thing when you're in this device or your iPad or your computer or whatever. If you're already jumping into emails and messages and blah, 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 just know that you have already violated boundaries because you have not. It's why we talked about the morning and the evening time. Those are boundaries you're creating for yourself so that you can play and be at your level of high performance that allows you to play at your highest and best game, and show up and lead with influence and create greater impact. And so oftentimes we have to start with leading ourselves. And if you're feeling exhausted or overwhelmed, it's because you haven't created boundaries that say, okay, whoa, everything's just coming down. If you're feeling hectic, if you're feeling stressed, it is a sign that you have not established the proper boundaries for what you need for that day. So I want you to recognize when that feeling shows up. Your feelings are your absolute metric. They are the thermostat. They are the, whatever you want to call it, they are the gauge that say whether or not you're showing up and playing full out or not. So check into your body. Are you feeling like you're like, oh, my body's so tight and I want... Feel into your emotions and feel into how your body physically feels. It will be a clear metric around whether or not you need to establish boundaries or you're letting people push you around at that moment. So I think that's a really powerful statement to make. And Mario, I appreciate the vulnerability on this too. I know you're being wide open right now. So thank you. Elaine, setting boundaries for what other people think you need to be doing. Okay. Yes, we absolutely need to stop the shooting all over ourselves. And we need to create clear boundaries that say, I get to decide how I'm going to choose to live my life. There was a meme yesterday that went around that was talking about older dogs, and it's a new advertising campaign that says, I'm a grown-ass adult, when it talks about why people should adopt older dogs, and I just love it. And I want you to plant that little phrase in your head. You're a grown-ass adult, all of you. You are grown-ass adults that have permission to decide how to live your life. Nobody gets to dictate unless you give them that power. And so when you are not creating boundaries and you let other people decide how they think you should be living your life, that is absolutely an area to start creating boundaries. Because until you decide what you need, you will never, honestly, until you get really clear on what you want, what you desire, what you need, and I mean, get very clear and say, these are non-negotiables for me. Until you spend time to do that, you will never create appropriate boundaries with anyone else. Because if you can't get clear with yourself about what you need and what you want, how the hell can you expect somebody else to show up for what you need and want in that space? And so it is really releasing the shoulding that you're doing, where you think, I should be this for this person, and well, my family expects me to do this. Great. That's their expectation. That's their opportunity to work on moving into a new space. Doesn't matter what anybody expects from you or what you used to do in the past and how you used to show up with somebody. You can right here, right now, decide to be something different. You can grow and change and evolve in this moment and simply say that from now on, that is a non-negotiable for me. From now on, that's not okay, and I'm going to start getting much better at communicating what I need in that space. I am becoming more comfortable in asking for what I need. I am becoming more comfortable in communicating what my boundaries are. I am becoming more comfortable with setting non-negotiables that are absolutely things that I will not tolerate. I have walked up out of conversations when I've been very clear, that is not a conversation I'm going to have with you. And someone just went, and I'm like, I don't think you understand. This is not a space, because it's not somebody I feel will hold an open space. That I will not have conversations that are very charged with people that are just looking to point a finger, people that are going to get into a very prejudiced kind of space. I remember even being in college, one of my suite mates, I lived in a suite, she brought her boyfriend over at the time, and he was incredibly racial and prejudiced, and that's something that is a trigger for me on every level. I mean, even my family being Italian, there are times my mom has made me walk around the block like 12 times because I'm like, I can't handle this conversation right now. And he would come into our main area. So we had 2 different bedrooms, and then there was a main open area, and his language. And I finally looked at him, I said, absolutely not. I said, I will not allow you to speak that in my house. And where I reside. And he's like, well, this is, Lisa's house too, and she can. And I said, no, absolutely not. This is a boundary I have, and I will not. And he said, he made a comment about that. And I remember Lisa going, you know what? No, Candy's right. She pays for this space, and I don't want to hear that either. And she's like, which she ended up breaking up with him later on. But I'm like, I absolutely will not tolerate certain things in my home, in my space. And I will be very clear to communicate that. And I will be very clear to ask you to leave if you choose not to respect the boundary that I asked for. Because that's the other thing about boundaries. When you communicate them, when you put them out there, and if someone chooses, and again, there's that word, right? Chooses to not respect them and violate them, then there is a consequence. And a consequence is not necessarily bad or good. A consequence is simply an outcome for a choice that was made. And so when you think about there's an outcome, and I will absolutely be like, then I'm going to ask you to leave, or I'm going to remove myself from this situation, or, unless you choose to want to communicate differently, I think this is probably our last conversation. Whatever it is, I'm willing to walk away when you get so clear on who you are. The problem is most people don't have a clear sense of who they are, and they're too afraid to stand in a convicted space that says, I'm not tolerating anything less than this. And so I really encourage you that if these things are showing up for you, that it's an opportunity to set boundaries. If you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling like people are shooting all over you, if you feel like you're constantly being charged when someone's around you, you have an opportunity to set boundaries. And that is your responsibility. That's no one else's responsibility. Terry, for myself, amount of time I spend lifting others up. I wish I could spend all the time in the world with people to encourage and brainstorm and celebrate them. Time boundaries are important. Yes, and the thing is you can only lift people up if you're taking time and care to lift yourself up. So if you spend every waking minute being for everyone else, you are at some point just handing over the depleted crap left in the tank because you are not being purposeful about replenishing and creating your own time. And yes, time boundaries are important. We need white space. We need think space. We need play space, self-care space. You need more time for yourself than you think. And truthfully, most of you need to reverse your calendar where you might be giving yourself 5 or 10% self-care. What you don't, and the thing that's so amazing is the more you step in the space, and I know that some of you that have worked with me, you've seen this, but the more space you give for yourself, the more you actually give and can be productive for other people. It's when you stop creating those boundaries for what you need, and the more white space, the more self-care space, the more intentional space for you to reflect, meditate, journal, play, just be, the more you actually can put out there and serve. But what happens is we think we've got to keep exhausting that out. Mark, family and business, being selective because we only have so much time with balance. Yes, for those of you that, whether you're a business owner or you're working the job, when you are giving every bit of your energy and not giving time for your family. It's why when we talked about the 5 a.m. club, after you have that power hour, that victory hour in the morning, is creating that dedicated space when you have some of your best energy to connect and be with family members, to be present. There's also a boundary that I've taught people. Say, for example, you work outside of the office, or maybe you work in your house. But when you're done with your day, first of all, be done with your day. When you're done with your day, then give yourself 10, 15, 30 minutes to quiet yourself down, to close out that piece of the day, to sit, to meditate, to journal, to ask yourself how you showed up, so that you then, when you go in and are with your family, you're not bringing all that residual crap with you. You're not bringing all the stress. You're not bringing all of whatever you feel like you didn't do well, what you didn't do right. And so what I want you to think about is, how do I effectively close this so that I can be fully 100% present, because it's not so much about the quantity of time, it's about the way and the quality of how we choose to spend our time. And if you're half-assing it, where you're on a phone taking a T-con while you're trying to play with your kids, you know what your kids are going to remember? The fact that you were unavailable to them. Even if you are presently being there, it's because you are not being present. And what's interesting to me is, even when Peyton does it, most kids and animals, when they're like, I want some attention, give them full attention if you can do that in that moment, because it usually lasts for about 10 to 20 minutes, and then they get bored and they want to go do something else. But that 10 to 20 minutes will be so memorable for them. So create boundaries around how you can shut it off. And if you need to create a boundary with a family or a child that says, I need 30 minutes to finish this, then you set a timer for 30 minutes and you honor that, even if your kids can't tell time yet. Because when you stop honoring your commitments, when you stop honoring things that you've said for yourself, for your loved ones, what happens is you become untrustworthy for yourself, which means your boundaries mean nothing. And so I want you to think about, if you're going to say something, then you own it, you absolutely show up in that way. And if you said 30 minutes, then damn it, it's 30 minutes. And I don't care if you're finished with what you were doing or not, you honor that statement so that you are creating that trust for yourself, and you are teaching your children, whoever, how to do the same for themselves. That is absolutely critical. Oh my God, me too. See my comment. Excellent. I'm the same way. I've spent 4+ hours on the phone in the middle of my workday with someone who is struggling with something just to help them, and then I get nothing done. Yes, you need boundaries. It would be easy for me to have coaching calls go on for 4 hours at a time. And I have to be very clear about, okay, this is the allotted time. There are times we go over, and then I'm like, okay, once I feel like we've gotten to a point, I'm like, all right, if we need more time, set up more time, but that's great for now. I've got another meeting to go to. And sometimes I actually will book another meeting behind it so that I keep myself honest, so that I'm not overstepping boundaries that I put in place. And follow so many people on social media. Yes, social media is a big freaking cesspool of humanity. I love the way Brene Brown said that in Call to Courage. So I choose the things that I allow myself to get engaged in. Good morning, Kevin. Let's see, Paul. Need to set boundaries for the aspect of your job. I say that it's not my area. You need to see X. Absolutely. You do not need to know everything, nor do you. You are so right. This is so important. The number of people who say to me, you are not working, so you can fill in. Oh my God, people that think entrepreneurs are not working, or stay-at-home moms are not working, or whatever. They do not get to determine what your boundaries are. They do not get to determine how you spend your time. Owning a business requires more focus and effort than my corporate jobs ever did. Amen to that. I start out telling people the crazy. No, you don't. Here's the thing. And I want you to realize that. And Terry, I appreciate that. Yes, now you just smile and nod, because here's the thing. You do not owe anyone. And I'm going to end on this as I'm reading the rest of these comments. Let me see. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. Yep, great human being, awesome contribution to the world, behind your own needs and priorities. Yes, I love that you guys are so talking to each other as well. In my experience, it helps me set expectations for others. Yes, when you set boundaries for yourself, you set expectations, help others do the same. Such as outgoing voicemail message. By the way, I could get on live voicemail. So powerful. We'll do that on another call. I return calls between 10 and noon. Absolutely. Mark, my top 5 every day is my first boundary. Gratefulness, affirmations, meditating, reading, exercise. Yes, I love that. Such a power hour right there. I unfollow people who spin up negative, judgmental, or drama. Absolutely. You get to decide. I like this idea. Thanks for sharing. I have removed my kids from several family gatherings in which extended family members begin racially attacking conversations. Absolutely. You get to decide. Wow, I just realized now that I'm an entrepreneur with a home office, I don't have a day-ending practice. I used to have the car ride home, but now my work and personal life blur. Yes, before I decouple, I'm going to try out day-end meditation. Absolutely. And the one thing I'm going to add to what Terry said, when she says she just nods and smiles, I want you to realize that when you say no, when you create a boundary that's either a yes or no, and by the way, yes, period, no, period, are complete sentences. You do not need to give anyone an explanation, justification, rationalization, or apology for the boundary that you created. Period. Period. I want you to understand that. If you say, no, that's not okay for me, you do not need to explain why. And the minute you get into a space to defend yourself, to rationalize, to justify, you now gave somebody a way to wheedle their way in and make you feel guilty or shame you or give you all kinds of like shoulding, when I say no, the only thing I might add is no, thank you. And someone's like, well, why? And I'm like, doesn't work for me, doesn't serve me. And that's it. And when they keep talking, I'm like, oh, I think you misunderstood. I'm done with this conversation. I gave you my answer. And if they keep going, I walk away. Because yes and no, know how to effectively use them both. They do not require anything further than no, thank you. Thank you so much for thinking to me. That's not for me. No, thank you. Period. Know that until you can say yes and no clearly, you have a massive amount of work to do when it comes to creating your own boundaries. If you feel you have to constantly justify, rationalize, apologize, then your boundary has not been clearly established. And so I want you to think about that as you're going into your week. I want you to practice saying yes, period, no, period, and the only other thing that you might add is thank you. Because when you do that, you start to cement your boundaries and start to help people engage with you at the level that you need, want, and desire, and you teach people how to do the same for themselves. Awesome discussion, you guys. I love this. I am so jazzed. This is going to be a phenomenal week. Go out there and show up at your best and highest level. I am here. I love you so much. Take some consideration and time to think about what your boundaries are, how you want to establish those boundaries, and start practicing saying yes and no effectively. With that, I love you so much. I will see y'all tomorrow. We'll do a big training session, and fantastic. Go drink your coffee, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.